Hello, welcome back to another episode breakdown, and I will be changing the name to episode breakdown. I feel like director's cut has its own, not connotation, but it has its own meaning. It means a certain thing, and this isn't really that. I'm discussing what the episode is, what I was going for, and what I did. So, episode breakdown or content breakdown should be a lot more accurate. I reviewed a little bit of the video from last time, and I've learned from some of the mistakes. I have a new microphone that's on a stand, and it has cardioid directionality with the audio, so ostensibly anything behind the microphone shouldn't get picked up as well as anything in front of it. Unfortunately, and so I thought maybe I could just have my speakers going without having my headphones on. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. The speaker's sound was still getting picked up by the microphone. Additionally, usually I will edit my audio in Audacity to try, hold on, I feel like I'm smacking my lips a lot. I don't know that this will make it any better, but I just woke up a little bit ago, so I've been trying to drink water. I feel like in Audacity, I will try and edit so that it decreases the background noise. And I didn't review the audio before posting that. It ended up making this like high-pitched frequency reverb. I don't know what to call it, but it didn't sound as good as I was hoping. So I'll make sure not to do that. Or if I do that, I'll double check the audio and make sure that it's not causing that issue. As promised, I'm going to try and make this a shorter episode than last time. I have a tendency to bloviate, but hopefully we won't be here for an hour again because I do have things to do. I'm currently recording this on a Saturday, but I think I'll try and post it on Sunday. If you haven't noticed, I try and post all my videos on Sundays because I want that consistency. If I tell you, hey, the new video is coming out, then I want you to look forward to it on Sunday. I try my best to keep a schedule, but I don't always manage that. So I'll be setting this to upload probably bright and early Sunday morning. I haven't really determined a time yet, but I'll upload this on Sunday. And the last housekeeping thing is I will do my best to add timestamps. I feel like, especially in that hour-long episode, there were a lot of important things that I discussed that would have been better broken up into different segments, that would have been broken into, like, categories. But I didn't think to timestamp it, and I don't really want to listen to myself talk for an hour, not because I hate the sound of myself or anything like that. I know some people who absolutely detest hearing their own voice, but just because I already know everything that I said, so I would just get bored, and that's the truth of it. So I'll be switching back and forth. You'll hear me clicking like that between OBS and my Google Doc, so I can see how far into this recording I am, so I can add proper timestamps. Okay. So also, if you hear, or perhaps if you don't hear, I've got a new keyboard. It's not as clacky as the old one, so hopefully my keyboard sounds won't get picked up as much on my recordings anymore. So let's see. I'm just gonna go ahead and delete this because I've already delete that. Nah, I won't delete them. So this episode 2 was made out of necessity, not passion. The other episode 1, I made because I loved the music and I loved the idea, and so I made those. This is like bread. It's not really the star of the show. It's meant to convey something more important. So in this episode, we discuss Goten's background, how he became what he is in this series. It's not... in terms of ranking, this one is last place for me in this series. Not because I dislike it, not because I feel like anything was done poorly in it. In fact, I have very few edits that I would make if I were to redo this. It's more about the fact that this one just, again, wasn't made out of passion. This one wasn't made out of passion. It was made because it was a necessity. I needed, or I felt, that I needed to explain where Goten was during the Future Trunks saga, for example. I needed to retcon the fact that he wasn't in the series at all. I wanted to explain his complex because it sets up for the future, what was originally the finale. So this series started out, as with all my series, started out as just a simple 3-episode series, a trilogy. But unfortunately, the final episode always ends up being so large that I feel it's better to split it into 2 different episodes, 3 and 4. And that's usually because of a tonal shift. Just because I go from like, oh, this is a good stopping point in this episode, and then it just feels kind of awkward going to the next or the final part of the episode without having like a commercial break or something. You'll notice later on I start to use my end credits to facilitate a tonal shift when there's more story I need to tell, but it doesn't really match what's been going on so far. But that hasn't happened yet, so we'll talk about that more in the future. Okay, so we can go ahead and get, oh, I need a timestamp. You're at 7 minutes already. Okay, so I want to start out by saying episode 2, you'll notice that this clip has audio, this clip has audio from the original show, this clip has audio. Episode 2 is the only one of my original Dragon Ball Z episodes. Was this Z or Kai? Oh, I didn't even credit it. I just realized. Huh. I don't normally do that. Normally I credit every single episode, no matter how minor its role is. But anyway, I'm pretty sure this is episode 2 of Dragon Ball Kai, now that I think about it. And it's the only episode I had that was in English. All my other episodes they had dual channel. It was Japanese and English. But this one is the only one that was in English due to a file conversion mistake that I made. So when I'm playing this, you'll notice this is, again, the only one that doesn't have any audio. This is also back when I made flashlights black and white because I couldn't think of any other way to differentiate them from the current ongoing timeline, the present time. In the future, what I end up doing is I do an effect, and I'll show you really quickly. I do an effect called noise, which makes everything look grainy, and I desaturate the episode. So if I were to redo this in my current style, instead of black and white, I would go to noise. We're going to take it off the preview. And the intensity, let's have 5. So notice the difference between this and this. I also take some of the saturation out, so it looks like, if you've ever seen original Dragon Ball, how it looked back in the day versus how Dragon Ball Z looks versus how Dragon Ball Super looks now. It's a lot more colorful now. I don't know if it's because of not the editing process, but the animation process, the process of making the episode or what, but it looks different. So I'm trying to imitate like older cartoons in the 80s and 90s. So notice again the difference between this with the grain and the saturation as opposed to the original. It's a lot more colorful, a lot clearer. But that's essentially what I do now. Let's go ahead and get this back to how it originally was. Okay. And let's play the video. Oh, where's my audio? What's going on here? Oh, I think I might have, hold on. No, this is all correct. I don't know why my audio isn't playing anymore. I think maybe because this is recording. Let's change this. Okay, so if I change that. No, it's still not playing my audio. Okay, well, something odd is going on. I think it has to do with the fact that I'm recording the audio while trying to listen to it from a different output. It's something I'll look into later on, but I've already watched the episode. There weren't, I mean, the music is some, oh, but what if it doesn't record here? Let's see. No, it records here. Okay. So the music isn't something that, the music and the audio isn't something I really need to edit all that much or talk about. So I'm not going to bother bringing it up. I'm not going to bother trying to fix that. It's not a concern right now. So you guys will hear, I won't be able to hear. Which actually, now that I think about it, would make it easier for me to talk over this. But so here, I wanted to just point out the difference between Gohan and Goten. I wanted to make them seem like polar opposites. And I discussed it in more detail, but essentially what I end up saying is that Gohan is cowardly until he's pushed to fight, and then he fights. I just read, hold on. So this episode has more. This had a longer script that eventually was cut because of time constraints. So originally I wanted to talk about being a hybrid between a Saiyan and a human, and I wanted to discuss why it's so much easier for Goku. Like, Kid Goku was merciless. He killed a lot more people as a kid than he did as an adult, and I had an explanation for that. My explanation was going to be, oh, and I just realized there's even more of this. So the explanation is that Saiyans are bred to fight. Their entire culture and their people are built around the fact that they're warriors. They thrive in battle. That's what they seek. And so the Saiyans that didn't want to fight slowly died off, and the Saiyans that did want to fight continued to have children and continued to push this perhaps aggressive gene, or at the very least were raised in an aggressive household. So Saiyans by nature have less emotions than humans do. They just want to fight. They're okay with being angry. They're okay with killing. I wanted it to be that humans are more emotional. They have passions and happiness and sadness. They have anxiety and compassion. They're more affectionate. I just wanted them to have more emotions in general. And so a Saiyan that has children with a human ends up making a hybrid that has the best of both worlds. The Saiyan strength and perhaps lust for battle, but also the human emotions which affect them. Humans, when they get angrier, become stronger, right? Or when they're in danger, they become stronger. Think of a mother who, there are stories of this, whether it's true or not. There are mothers who will lift a car with Herculean strength to get their child that's trapped out from underneath the car, right? They have this explosive strength that comes out based on their emotions. And sure, Saiyans have that, like when Goku becomes Super Saiyan, but it becomes more so whenever, for humans, it becomes more so for humans. So I wanted to have this juxtaposition between the Saiyan emotions or lack thereof and the human emotions, but that was cut due to time constraints. Also, I just didn't have the clips for this. Like, what would I show when talking about all of this? And shoot, this would have been a good Saiyan versus human motion. That would have been a good time break for me to make. I don't know how long ago that was. I'll probably go back and watch this since this will be a shorter episode. It'll be easier for me to edit, even though I don't want to do much editing. So, what would I show during this? Would I show like Gohan just living a normal life for the human part, and then Gohan fighting for the Saiyan part? I don't know. I couldn't really think of any. You know, since I'm gonna edit this, I'm gonna drink some water. Okay, so I just couldn't really figure out what I was going to show. I would need like a graphic, I felt like, and I didn't feel like drawing a graphic because this is back when my videos used to be pretty short comparatively. They were at most 2.5 minutes, so I didn't. And the reason my videos were so short, by the way, I was afraid that if I made videos that were too long, people would lose interest and not watch them to completion. So I was making shorter videos to try and convey as much information as I could in the shortest amount of time so that people wouldn't get bored and click off of them. And that still affects me to this day. I still try and make a shorter, like even this, I'm trying to make shorter so people don't get bored halfway through. Ultimately, the people who want to watch will watch and the people who don't won't. But I'm doing my best to appeal to the widest community that I can. Anyway, so that whole Saiyan conversation got cut. There was also an interaction between Vegeta and Trunks that got cut. So, and this kind of plays into a future episode that I made, but you know what? I will talk about Vegeta in just a little bit. Let's keep going with the androids. Here I do want to point out the androids. I made their eyes the only thing that had color because I thought it would be distinctive. I wanted something to pop here since everything else is gray in background, and I just thought it would look cool. In order to do this, I did have to edit it. So in the original file, everything is black and white. And then all I did, because I couldn't figure this out any other way, all I did was, this is a cutout of 17, where the effects, instead of just being black and white, the only color they leave are the blue of his eyes. I had to do the same thing for 18. The reason I didn't just do that in the primary file is because it started having issues with their clothing. Let me see if I can show you. If I delete the masks and I have them as the only thing, oh, in the background. Okay, so you can see like the background is also kind of blue. So I couldn't get that to really stay. So I just had a mask where only the blue of the screen is shown, but then I cut it so that only this area and this area have it. You can still see it a little bit in her clothing here, I just realized, but I don't think it matters all that much. So go ahead and undo everything that I just did. Okay. Again, I wanted Vegeta talking more than Goku because, you know, Trunks is here. But unfortunately, he doesn't have very many talking points in this, well, under the Garden Pagoda. We'll talk about that in a bit. The music here I just added on a whim. Originally this didn't have any music, I just thought it would be interesting to add it. I had fun adding the sound effects here, just because I think it's the first time I had a crowd screaming, and I just felt like I did a good job. I was really happy with how this section came out. Same thing with the fire here. Here, I made it as if Goten was reacting to Vegeta going ch, because I thought it would be interesting. Let's take a look at what the actual clip is. So he does actually fight everyone, but Trunks shows up, and that's what he's looking at, and is not going to show the rest. It looks like it might be glitched out. Yeah, there we go. Because Trunks is recalling how he fought Goku Black. I ended up, of course, cutting that because it wasn't important here, but just wanted to show that. Oops. There we go. So you'll notice that Vegeta's transformation here is actually outside. This is from a completely different episode. This was also my first attempt at comedy, I'm pretty sure, in this series, or in any of these like reimaginings. Let's see. Yeah, I think this is... I don't really want to talk over myself. Okay, so I think this is as good a time as any to talk about the problem with Vegeta. We'll have this be its own timestamp. Okay, so let's see. I talked about that. So you may have noticed that in my videos, Vegeta never gets the spotlight. In fact, he's hardly ever a part of any of them. If he talks, it's usually for such a short amount of time. For instance, in the villain Goku arc, in episode, let me think, 4, that's the most talking that he's done in my series to date. He doesn't get a lot of discussion, not only because he doesn't talk as much. Usually he only talks when he's in a battle, and if I'm setting up for something, then I don't really want to show him fighting in the middle of setting up for a fight. But also, it's a problem with Vegeta as a whole. I feel like I've neglected him, and the problem is he's a good character. When I make these series, this series I feel like a lot of people accepted because they don't like the Goku Black series, which I completely disagree with. The Goku Black arc is my favorite of Dragon Ball Super, and Goku Black, maybe not him as a character, but him as a villain, is one of the most fun concepts I've seen in Dragon Ball Super. I know a ton of people hate him, and they say this is their least favorite arc in all of Dragon Ball Super. But personally, I love it. I'm all about it. So the question is, why don't I have Vegeta added very often? And it's because of that. Because so many people disliked the Goku Black arc, I felt like it was easier for me to modify it. People were more accepting of me changing it. If I were to change something that people loved as much, such as Vegeta's character, then I feel like it wouldn't be tolerated as well. Mind you, I will still make changes that I feel are interesting or just interesting. I'm not trying to make the story better. I don't think that my episodes are better than the original episode. I'm not trying to say they should have done this. The purpose of me making these videos is just to show what could happen. What if this had happened? And I feel like that makes it fun to watch. Vegeta, in and of himself, is already such a complete character. The only thing I would change about him, if anything, is I wish he would win more often. I wish he would be allowed to win instead of just being a setup for Goku so often, like he's become in Dragon Ball Super. It's quite frustrating, and I know a lot of Vegeta fans will tell you that as well. For Vegeta, there isn't really much that I can change about his character, and there isn't very much that I need him to say. And the times that I do want him to talk, again, he's in the middle of a battle, so it's difficult for me to make him talk. For instance, in this episode, let's see. Okay, we're at a minute 5. I'll make sure to come back to it. In this episode, you'll notice that the characters are under this pagoda. So that's where most of the also, this is a still frame. This is just an image. They were like moving too much and it didn't last long enough for this sentence, so it's just a still frame. Everyone is under the pagoda, whereas the only time Vegeta talks is when he's outside. I had to, and I think here they're getting ready to leave the pagoda. I had to distinguish between everyone being in the pagoda and everyone being out from under the pagoda. And I just felt like it would be awkward if some of the characters were outside the pagoda and some of them were inside, because then you start to wonder how far away, at least I start to wonder how far away are they that they're still able to hear. Why aren't they all just in the same area? In the original episode, Trunks appears under the pagoda, or he's recovered under the pagoda. So that's when I don't know that it's actually called a pagoda, but I don't know what else to call it. This is where he does most of his talking. He doesn't do as much talking outside, so it was necessary for me to split this episode into 2 halves, under the pagoda and outside. Unfortunately, Vegeta doesn't do a lot of talking under the pagoda, so that's why he isn't featured as much. I would have loved for him to have talked more, and in fact, in the original script, Vegeta confronts Trunks. He says how... So the theme of Vegeta versus Trunks in the debate was going to be parents and their children and the generational misunderstandings between them. So if you have a parent who's born during the baby boomer era and you're a millennial, or maybe even if you're a Gen Z, maybe your parents don't understand some of the changes that have happened throughout the generations. For instance, my mom was born during the baby boomer era, and I am a millennial. So, and also growing up in Nigeria, things were a lot different for her than me, who was born and raised in America. So there was a misunderstanding between us, not just because of the generational gap, but because of the cultural gap. And that's something I wanted to bring up here, was more Saiyan culture. In Nigeria, things are a lot more... People are less, maybe emotional. I'm not quite sure how to say it, but essentially, if your child has ADHD, you don't... In America, you go and you get them seen by a doctor and you get them medication, and they stay on medication so that they can focus for school, for work, for life. In Nigeria, you just get beat. There's no talking to a therapist. There's no talking to a doctor and getting medicine. They just say that you're acting up, you're being a wild child, you have too much energy, and so either they will put you to work so that you get rid of your energy, or they just beat it out of you. They beat you until you learn to, quote unquote, act proper. And having been raised between 2 different cultures, American culture, which is a lot more comforting to the child, and Nigerian culture, where people are a lot more perhaps abrasive from American standpoint. Of course, Nigerians see Americans as very wimpy, I guess. They coddle their children too much. But anyway, there's that miscommunication. So I wanted Vegeta and Trunks to have something similar. Vegeta was raised in a culture where you got things done on your own. You did things by your own strength. Whether you lived or died, whether you succeeded or not, was solely dependent on your strength as an individual. You didn't go and ask others for help. You did things on your own. So I wanted Vegeta to have a discussion with Trunks saying, this is the second time you've come back from the future. Why are you unable to get things done with your own strength. By the time I was 10, I had conquered 3 planets already. I struggled and I had a difficult time, and because of that, I am the strong man that I am today. I'm able to do things by my own strength. I don't have to ask others for help. How many times have you seen me need to ask others to take care of my problems? And in fact, the only time that has happened in Dragon Ball Z is when Vegeta was dying. When Frieza was about to kill him, he begged Goku to kill Frieza for the sake of the Saiyans. No other time that I can think of has Vegeta said, you know what, I'll pass off this problem to someone else. So I wanted him to have that miscommunication with Trunks. Trunks, being a half human, he has more emotions. It's more acceptable for him to ask for help, and so he does that. But Vegeta, being a pure Saiyan, doesn't understand that, because that's not something that they did on Planet Vegeta. That's not something that Saiyans in general do. This was a discussion that I, in my head, wrote out the script for it, and I was so excited to add it, and unfortunately it got cut from this because there aren't a lot of conversations where Vegeta is just calm, you know? The only other time that I can think of that Vegeta talks to Trunks is here, where he's fighting him, where they're in the middle of a battle, and it was a bit of a struggle to have a transition from under the pagoda to outside. It was a struggle for me to make that transition, so I ended up having to cut the conversation. But I so wanted to talk about Saiyan culture, and it doesn't necessarily, like, Saiyan culture doesn't have to be Nigerian culture just because I'm Nigerian. I just wanted to talk about it more because we don't see a lot of the Saiyans outside of course, flashbacks. We learned about their culture from Vegeta. He's the sole source of their culture at this point, because Goku, the only other Saiyan, wasn't raised on planet Vegeta, so he doesn't know it. So I just wanted to explore that more. I wanted to explore what Saiyans are like more. We know that they're warriors, they're more aggressive, they fight more, they're more headstrong, more prideful, but I don't know, I wanted to delve deeper into that. Again, unfortunately, because of time constraints, I wasn't able to. But anyway, that's why Vegeta doesn't get the spotlight as much in my videos, is because the only time he really talks is when he's in a battle. He's not usually very calm, because that's not who he is as a person, because he's already well developed as a character, and so there's not very much room for me to add anything. And I think that's it. Those are the main reasons that Vegeta kind of gets snuffed in my videos. In fact, I even play into this a little bit. In the video that I'm making right now, which I haven't had time to work on it because of working at the vet hospital, but in my latest series, the Speedrun series, Vegeta gets shafted a lot. Like, I've intentionally pushed him away from the spotlight so that he can finally have his own episode. You'll even see, when we get to it, I'll talk about it, but the after credits where I show Vegeta being jealous of someone's strength, or wishing that he was something more, or just being angry that someone else saved the day yet again and he's being lost or he's falling behind. That was done intentionally, because I wanted to finally say, okay, I haven't talked about Vegeta very much. I've hardly ever shown him doing anything. He's kind of just there. He's been relegated to even more of he's no longer a major character, he's a side character. So that's something that I finally, in the final episode, the episode is all about, well, mostly about him, about how he's been feeling, what he's been doing, what he's been thinking for the entire time that this series has been going on. I don't want to get too far into that, because that's something I'm sure I'll rehash in the future episode, but that's what this all comes down to. And that's why Vegeta doesn't get talked about a lot. So at this point, I wanted to transition from under the pagoda to outside, because I was running out of dialogue for everyone to be talking. Plus, we're shifting the conversation to the topic of time travel, which is something I love. So I needed to have some kind of transition. So this is what this conversation was caused by. The sound effect here, by the way, I can't hear it, but I'm sure it played. The sound effect there is very difficult for me to look up. I don't know what to call that sound. This like... So I just ended up going to YouTube and looking up transition sound effects, and it took me quite a while to find one that I was okay with because I didn't know how else to describe it. Same with the like drums there. Also notice the difference in Beerus's voice there. How he went from like, oh, so this is what you did, huh? Show me. And then this little segment I had to repeat back and forth because I needed some time for I just needed a little break after Beerus talks. I didn't want to go to show me. Boom. So I just took the image of Trunks' wobbling eyes and played it back and forth for a bit.
これからどうなさいます？予知部で見た誰かさんを忘れたっていう。恐竜のお肉どうなさいます？
Okay, let's talk about time travel. So, I love time travel, and I wanted to. Oh, this outline, by the way, for Beerus is one that I traced myself. I had more that ended up not getting used, but I'll talk about that in a bit. I needed an excuse for some shenanigans I did in episode 3. So I had to change how time travel, or I had to add to how time travel works in Dragon Ball Z, or Dragon Ball in general. Originally, when I was watching the episodes and they brought out the time rings and things like that, my understanding was, oh, okay, so the reason that they say only a god of time, a god of destruction, or a Kai should time travel is because they have these time rings, and so there are two main theories for time travel, right? Either you time travel and you create a new timeline whenever you time travel, and that's what we've been shown. That's how things are in Dragon Ball Z. Every time Trunks goes back, it makes a new timeline. It doesn't correct the timeline. Or you go back in time and you affect that timeline directly and you completely change it, and there are no new timelines, and there's just an accepted, there's a continuity error. Why did you go back in time if the original problem never happened? But it's accepted that we're going to ignore that instead. So when I was originally watching Dragon Ball Super, I thought they were saying that whenever a god travels back in time, they use these time rings and they go back in time. They don't create new timelines. And that the reason that Trunks or mortals aren't allowed to time travel is because they don't have the time rings, so they end up making more timelines, which just creates more of a mess for the gods to watch over, because it's just one god who has to watch over all the timelines. That's what I thought they were going to say. They ended up not saying that, so I decided to use that theory here. Whenever a god in general time travels, they do the second one that I talked about, where they go and they affect the one time. There's only one timeline. They go back, they affect it, and everything is hunky-dory. But whenever a mortal does it, they make new timelines. So it's not really like they fixed anything. They just made a new timeline where things were different. And in episode 3, I'm going to talk about how the new Star Wars trilogy inspired some of the things I did there. But I needed an excuse for some time shenanigans, so that's why I set this up. I also like this song. So, just really quickly, I was also going to have more of this. I was going to have Whis explain, like, oh, when you went back in time, remember how Cell took your time machine and came to the future, and that's the Cell that was fought in Dragon Ball Z because Trunks was doing all this time travel shenanigan. Well, that was cut due to time constraints. The music is what's limiting me here, not the overall episode time. But the music was getting ready to get towards its apex. And in fact, you can see here, I think I just changed the volume here, but the music was getting ready to crescendo, and I needed a different scene to be at the crescendo, so I ended up cutting the discussion. But essentially, Whis was going to say, you've already gone back and forth, you made 6 timelines in total. Imagine, so the explanation for this ended up being truncated into what it is now, but it was supposed to be that time is like a wall, and every time a mortal travels through it travels through time, they poke a hole through the wall. So eventually you start to imagine, if you like punched a hole through a wall, you could see through it, and you would start to see into the other timeline. And the more holes you poke, the more times you travel, the more that affects the timeline. And eventually what happens is the wall is completely demolished, and there's no difference between one timeline and the other. And so characters start popping in and out of one timeline and the other, and you start getting thrown between the timelines. That was what this entire explanation was supposed to be. It's like when you poke holes through the walls and you start to see more and more of the other side of the room, the other room. You start to see the other room from the first room, until eventually there are so many holes that there's just no wall at all. And that's what the gods are trying to prevent mortals from doing, is mixing with the timelines and just causing a general issue. That was just broken down into this. That's what I was trying to show with the breaking through. This is my favorite part right here. Notice how Goten is slowly becoming larger on the screen. The transition of him becoming larger on the screen and this part is my favorite part of the episode. See? Okay, last thing to mention, Goku hardly ever says Goten's name. This is back when I was using the... one other thing to note. You may notice that whenever Whis is talking, you hear birds chirping still. That's because the audio... This is back when I was still getting my audio directly from the anime, and Whis was talking when they were outside. It was this segment, and there are birds chirping in the background. I tried removing the sound, but it just... That same effect that happened in my first episode breakdown, where it was like this high-pitched frequency reverb or something. That's what was happening with Whis whenever I tried to remove the birds chirping, so I ended up just leaving it. But you may notice that whenever he's talking, the birds are chirping. That's why. Same thing here. So Goku very rarely says Goten's name. He doesn't really talk about him very much. And part of that is because, Goten was in the last part of Dragon Ball Z, and he doesn't really play much of a role in Dragon Ball Super, not even as Gotenks. So it was really difficult for me to find... I think there were only 2 places in Dragon Ball Z where I could find Goku saying Goten's name. Either it was that, or there were only 2 places where he says Goten's name and it's not in the middle. Even this was in the middle of a different conversation. He was saying something else. Oh, no, he was saying, Goten, take care of your mom for me. This is when he was leaving back to Otherworld at the end or in the middle of the Buu saga. And he picks up Goten and he pats his head. So it was very difficult for me to find him saying Goten. Even when I use Xenoverse, he still mostly says Goten's name when talking about Goten and Gohan together. Final thing to point out, this spells out father. That was the whole point of me calling this heroic expectations, not only because, Goten is talking about Goten's expectations, but in fact, that's the whole point, that this isn't just episode 2, episode 3. It has all these things, it's so I could play around with the text. I was just trying something out. I feel like it was okay. And that's about it. Let me make sure I didn't miss any other explanations. Yeah, so, oh, and the text here of him saying father, that's supposed to be Goten's reply to Goku's, saying his name. And that's it. So, again, this episode I rated as my in last place for this series, not because there were many changes that I would make, but just because it was made out of necessity. There were a lot of cuts from the script, and that's just because of time constraints. Either me wanting to make this as short as possible, or because I was trying to match the music with what was supposed to be like the highlight, or I couldn't find the clips necessary to talk about like the difference between human and Saiyan emotions, or because I couldn't get Vegeta to talk about Saiyan culture. Because for him to talk about Saiyan culture, I wanted to show more of him as a kid or him on Planet Vegeta, but there just aren't that many clips of that. So, let's see. 47 minutes. Alright, seems like I can't make these shorter. I'll go through and I'll listen to this one to make sure the audio is working properly. I'm afraid what may have happened is that the audio for this won't end up in the video, but hopefully if you've stuck around this long, you enjoyed the insight into all of this. And I will see you next week. I'll try and be putting these out on Sunday. I can't make any promises, but that's what I'm going to aim for. I will see you next week with episode 3.